Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I hope you can see my slides as well. Can you see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's have the discussion today on money too. Now, I think last week we didn't meet as I had another session at the IBSL, and this week we are planning to continue with this balance part of money discussion. Previously, I remember I discussed the evolution concepts, different classifications, features of money, and then money demand. Today, we are continuing with the discussion on the other side of the equation, basically money supply. Uh, Now, in the economy, we know money is issued by a central bank mainly. When the central bank has issued that money in currency, notes, and coins form, that is circulated for uh, transactions. People demand those currency and notes and coins for their transactions, and economic activities are basically supported by this circulating money. Now, if you take the stock of money in circulation at a particular point in time, you call it money supply. Yes, money supply. Now, as I said, the central bank is putting money to the system, and that money is circulated for transactions, economic transactions. And at a particular point in time, if you take a count or a stock of money, that is referred to as money supply, which is a fixed amount in the short term. Now, if you take this money supply, you will see if this is the money supply. Now, this money supply will have various components. If you take this stock, this component will tell us money circulating in the economy, not limited to the amount injected by the central bank. As I said, in the money supply, there is currency. There is notes, currency notes, coins are there in the money supply. But if you take this total M, you will see there are some other components as well. So the total money supply is not equal to central bank money. There are some other components as well. These different components we can measure using the concept called monetary aggregates. So monetary aggregates are different components of money within the money supply. There could be M0, M1, M2. Likewise, there are various components in the money. So what does that mean? In the economy, there is more money than issued by the central bank. Total M is much bigger than the central bank money, what I have mentioned in the previous slide also. For example, in Sri Lanka, in 2019, reserve money was 933 billion. Reserve money means simply central bank money. Okay. There you have currency, notes, and some other items as well, but broadly you can call it central bank money. Central bank money was 933 billion, but M2 means this large M, for example, was 6,913 billion. So M2 is much bigger than reserve money by about more than 700%. Why is this? Why there is more money in the system than the central bank issued money? This is referred to as money creation. Money creation. Money is created in the economy. Now, when I say money is created, somebody might think, okay, money can be, simply created as, someone is performing a magic. It's not that the case. Money is created in the economy through the activities of financial institutions. What are these activities? Mainly deposit taking and lending. Who does deposit taking and lending in the economy? Predominantly or mainly by the banks. So banks are accepting deposits and giving loans. Through that process, money is created. For example, if a bank is making a loan, when that loan is given to the borrower, sorry, a matching deposit in the borrower's bank account is created. That is basically new money. Let's say you take a loan from a bank. When you take that loan, the bank will give you money into your account. So it's a new deposit in your account. So as the bank is giving a new loan, bank is creating a new deposit. Through this process, money other than central bank injected money is created. Or money is created in the economy more than the central bank money. So this process we refer to as money creation. So in simple words, process by which the money supply is increased due to bank lending and deposit taking. Central bank is only injecting central bank money, but in the economy there is more money issued by commercial banks. You call it money creation. Okay, I hope it's clear. Now, since from that discussion, what you can understand, in the economy, both the central bank and commercial banks create money. Now, I limit my discussion here to commercial banks for easy understanding. Now, if you broaden the money supply, these commercial banks can be some other banks also. In Sri Lanka, we may add licensed specialized banks. We may add licensed finance banks. But this part is very small. Mainly, we talk about commercial banks. So both the central bank and commercial banks create money. Central bank is creating base money or monetary base, which we call as the reserve money. I told you in some countries they use the term M0. So M0 means base money, monetary base in the economy, or reserve assets, reserve base of the central bank. How this reserve money is created or base money is created? It is by introducing new physical currency to the economy. Central bank is issuing new notes and coins to the economy. For example, if the central bank releases money from its vaults, new money, that is basically introducing new money or creating new money by the central bank. Now, even though I just simply say central bank can introduce this physical currency to the economy, which we call as monetary policy, expansionary monetary policy, central banks cannot do it. I mean, as a magic, as I said. How it can happen? Whenever the central bank wants to inject money, the base money to the economy, it has to purchase financial assets because money is created in the economy with an underlying asset. So that underlying asset is the financial assets acquired by the central bank. What are these financial assets? Could be domestic assets or foreign assets. Domestic assets means government securities, domestic securities. Foreign assets means maybe foreign securities or foreign currencies. Could be anything. So by purchasing domestic and foreign assets, that's the first source, and giving loans to financial institutions, maybe to a commercial bank, to a finance company. By giving loans to these institutions, central banks create money. Now, for you to understand this, I'll simply draw a central bank balance sheet. In the central bank balance sheet, you simply have assets and liabilities. On the asset liability side, we have this base money. Central bank has issued base money, notes and coins to the economy. How it has happened? Now let's say your base money is 100, so your balance sheet on liability side you have 100. We know a balance sheet cannot remain unbalanced. You have to balance it. So to make it 100 this side, you have to increase assets by 100. So how do you increase assets to match this base money? Either you can buy financial assets or you can give loans. So this is much more than this. I'll come back to that later, but very briefly, this is how it happens. Okay. Now, in our previous example, I told you 933 billion. So this part is actually 933 billion, this activity. But I told you in the economy, there is 6.9 trillion money. So if you take this part altogether, 6.9 trillion money is there. So how it is created? Then we have the second players of creating money, the banking system. They are contributing to increase total money supply, which we call as broad money or M2, M3, M4, etc., etc. How it happens? By deposit taking, okay? It creates money through deposit taking. So deposits are the part of money. So if you take the total money supply M, this M2 or whatever the broad money supply, it has currency, then deposits, right? So this deposit comes from here. So the entire deposit stock is part of money. I told you, whenever you take a loan, a new deposit is created in your account. So that is referred to as bank money or deposits, which contributes to total money supply. Now again, if you take the commercial bank balance sheet, on the liability side, you have deposits. Let's say it increases by 100. So your asset side should also increase by 100. How does it increases? How does the asset side of the commercial bank increases? Then we have the reasons here through purchasing financial assets, which means they can also buy government securities and foreign currencies. Also, they can lend. They can lend to the government entities, and also to the private sector. So mainly private sector is the key borrower of the banking system, and they are basically playing an important role as borrowers to create money in the economy. I hope you have some understanding what I am talking about. Before I move to the next part, does anyone have any question on money creation? Does anyone want to ask any question? All good? Can we move? Right. Now let's see how this happens. I told you this slide is very crowded with my writing, but if I come back to the same slide again, I told you central banks are creating money, and then banking system is creating money. Both together create broad M, money supply. How it happens? Broad M or broad money is created by or determined by multiples of base money. To make it very clear, I have used different notations for base money, reserve money, and all that. But to make it very clear, I'll write it here. B. So B is the base money. I'll write it as base. Or sometimes we call it reserve money, monetary base, or MC. Right? So when I say base money, it could be termed as anything. Okay? Then we have broad money. In monetary descriptions, we use M for that, large M. So large M is simply broad money, or it could be M1 up to, let's say, Mn, any number of definitions. Okay. So how this relationship happens, how base money becomes broad money, that is through multiplication or multiply. Then we can understand from B to M, there is a multiplication process which we called as money multiply. So the ratio between base money and broad money is the money multiplier. Sometimes we use simple M, sometimes we use MM, right? Sometimes some people use money multiplier as R, some people use RR, right? Whatever the notation, if it is not specifically mentioned, it is actually money multiplier. So money multiplier, here I have given you the clear definition. Simple M equals large M divided by base means money multiplier equals broad money divided by base money. So you can derive broad money out of that. Broad money equals to money multiplier multiplied by base money. So it indicates or measures the maximum amount of money created by the commercial bank based on a given amount of central bank money. Let's say central bank has injected 100 through its operations. How much the central commercial banks can create? It could be 1,000. So very simply, 100 becomes 1,000 means money multiply equals 10. It happens within the banking system and not with the central bank. So this 10 times increase in money can happen through the banking system. That word is important, system. Because only one bank cannot create money. Because only one bank, it will take a deposit, it will give a loan. The story is over from that point. But if you have a banking sector, then the money creation process will take place. I'll show you an example. So here we have an example of money creation by commercial banks. So this is an illustration, a simple illustration. What is the simple illustration? How the banking sector creates money in the economy. Now, to start with, we make some assumptions. So what are these assumptions? Here we start from the assumption. Central bank increases currency in circulation by 100. So that is our main first assumption. What does that mean? What is this 100? Can someone suggest an answer? What is that 100? Any answer? Central bank increases currency circulation by 100. According to our definition here, M equals M divided by B. What is that 100?
Base money.
Base money, exactly. Base money, or the monetary base, or reserve money, OM0. Whenever the central bank puts money to the system by currency, that is base money. Clear. So base money could be notes or coins, right? So here in our diagram or the illustration or the infographic, what we have here as 100 is what? Base money, right? So that is our first assumption. Second assumption, people will keep 5% of their income in notes and coins for liquidity purposes. For liquidity purposes, so for their day-to-day needs. Now, can you remember under demand for money, we discussed certain reasons? What are the reasons people keep money? Why should people have to have money in their hands under demand for money?
Transaction motivate, distribution motivate, preservation motivate.
Exactly. Transaction, precaution, speculation motive. For those purposes, people keep money in money form, in cash form. Right? So let's assume people keep 5% of their money holding in notes and coins. And the balance is deposited in the bank. Now, according to our diagram, so here people keep 5 rupees. Let's forget dollars here. Let's say 100 rupee. Now people keep 5 rupees in cash. So balance 95 rupee. Now they will deposit in a bank. So this person is depositing that in a bank. Okay, I'll come back to that diagram again. That is the second assumption. Third assumption, banks also maintain 10% as the statutory reserve ratio of the central bank. Can someone give an explanation for this 10% statutory reserve ratio? What do you mean by that? What is the statutory reserve ratio? Can anyone suggest an answer? Why this 10% is kept at the central bank? I know you have the answer, you have some understanding, but we need to express our understanding, isn't it? Why this 10% is kept? I think I mentioned to you about this, right? In the previous session, 10%. Okay, I'll give you some explanation. Now, let's say when a person deposits money in a bank, the bank has an option to lend the entire deposit to someone else. Let's say the bank has given the entire deposit as a loan to someone else. Now, what is the problem here? The bank is creating a new deposit based on the original deposit, and by the same amount, the money supply would increase. Let's say a person deposited 100, and if the bank gives a loan to someone the 100 rupees, then the money supply would be double, then it will become 200. So the bank can create more money and more money as they want. To control that, central banks impose this statutory reserve ratio. The central bank will say, okay, you can have this deposit 100, but you can't lend the entire 100 to someone else. You need to keep a proportion of the deposit with us, with the central bank. Central bank will say, okay, keep 10% with us. And by that amount, by that 10%, the money creation ability will be reduced. Okay, that is one reason to have statutory reserve ratio, to control money supply. Second reason, so that is the first reason, to control money supply. Money supply can be controlled using a statutory reserve ratio. Second reason is what? Now let's say you take that 100 and you give a loan to someone else, the entire 100. Now you don't have anything with you, zero. Now imagine the depositor will come back to you and ask, okay, can I have some part of that deposit? Now you are in trouble. Why? You have given that entire amount to the borrower, to someone else. But the depositor asks some money from you. So you can't give him a refund, or his deposit cannot be returned. What will happen? The person will have a kind of a bad feeling against the bank, which means the person will start having mistrusting the bank, which means he will think, okay, this bank doesn't have money to pay back. This bank will not have any sustainability because it can't pay for depositors. So not only him, he will tell that story to others also. So others will also come and ask for money. What can happen? That could lead to bank to face a liquidity crisis, or bank might face a liquidity crunch. Worst case, bank would lead to a bank run. Bank run means everyone asks their deposit. So that's an issue. So you avoid that. To avoid that, what can the central bank, the bank can do? When the customer comes and asks his money back, if you have given majority of the deposit as a loan, still you can have some form of money buffer at the central bank as a liquidity support. Not only one depositor, no, there are various depositors in your bank. So if you take 10% of all these deposits, then you will have enough money to pay this person back, because banks know by experience every depositor will not come to the bank at once. If you have 100 customers, only 10 will come at a particular point in time to withdraw. Not everyone will come. Everyone will come if you don't pay the deposit. If you don't honor his request, then everyone will come and ask for money. That is bad. That can be served out of this statutory reserve ratio. So in the central bank, so I write it here, for liquidity purposes, you keep statutory reserve ratio. Central bank, in the central bank, commercial banks have a current account. In this current account, this 10% is deposited. So it's a current account, so no interest is paid. It's kind of a deposit at the central bank for protection. So you call it statutory reserve ratio. In Sri Lanka, we call it statutory reserve ratio. In some countries, they have different terms, statutory ratio, or some countries use cash reserve ratio, CRR. In our case, in Sri Lanka, we call it SRR. So if you keep SRR 10%, now the bank cannot lend the entire deposit. They have to keep 10% at the central bank, right? Okay, with that background, let's go to this diagram, then we can understand the money creation process. Okay, remove these things, then it will be much clear. Right. So our first assumption, we increase our base money by 100 rupees. So by 100 you increase base money. Out of that 100 you keep 5 as your cash need, or for your demands on daily basis, speculation, maybe transaction, precaution, speculation, for whatever reason you keep 5. The balance 95 you deposit in this bank A. Now bank A is an intermediary. He accepts deposits and gives away loans. Right? So what does the bank A now do? They will keep 10% out of this deposit. So 95 out of 95, 10% is basically how much? 9.5. The balance 85.5 will be given as a loan to another person. Let's say this person is person B. To person B, the bank is giving a loan. So person B is interacting with economic transactions. Maybe he is doing, let's say he builds a house by borrowing. So when he builds the house, he should pay to his supplier. So the person who has borrowed this money, let's say he is paying to person B, right? Now person B might have 85.5 in cash because he received from, sorry, let's say person C. This is person C. So he keeps 5% for his cash need, that is 4.2 rupees, and the balance 81.2 he will deposit in bank B. Again, bank B is an intermediary. He will take a deposit and gives away loans. He keeps 10% out of his deposit and he gives away loan 73.1 rupees to person, let's say person D. Similarly, let's say person D has taken this loan for his business. He wants to expand his business. For his suppliers, he pays this 73.1. Let's say that is person E. So he keeps 5% out of that as cash. This is 3.6. And the balance 6.9 is deposited in bank C. Now, this is not over. This doesn't have an end here. This continues until the first 100 rupees becomes 0 in our assumption. Only that 100 is injected, that becomes, until that becomes 0, this process is continuing. Let's say throughout that process, the amount of money created, the entire money created is 400. In other words, after this initial deposit becomes 0, if you calculate money supply in the economy, let's say we came to know now the money supply in the economy is 400. So out of this 400, we know there are two types of money. One, central bank has created money. How much? It is 100. That is the original deposit. Out of this 400, the balance 300 is created by commercial banks. That part you call it bank money. So the entire money supply in the economy now, central bank money 100, bank money 300, altogether 400. I hope it's clear how does the banks create money in the economy by way of accepting deposits and giving away loans. Any questions here? No? Can we move? Right. Now, here I have summarized what I have mentioned. Money creation in the economy has happened through a concept called fractional reserve banking. What do you mean by fractional reserve banking? Remember, out of this 100, the bank has received 95 as their deposit. Out of that, the bank has kept a 10% statutory reserve ratio. That 10% is actually the fraction of original deposit. So that's why you call it fractional reserve banking. So you keep a reserve as a fraction of the original deposit. So through expansionary monetary policy, you create money. Expansionary means you increase the money supply through giving loans and accepting deposits. And if you take the entire money supply, we already discussed the central bank is creating money. So this is central bank money. Commercial banks are creating money. So this is the commercial bank original deposit. Through the original deposit, other banks are also creating money. So if you take this last block, this is the entire money supply. Sorry, the last block should be this part. So the last block, the broad money supply, entire money supply, it has three components. This is central bank money. This part is commercial bank money. Commercial bank money came out from the first commercial bank, the orange part, and other commercial banks who joined this process, which is given in blue part. So altogether, this is creating more money in the system. So the central bank has created only this part, but the entire economy has 3 times, according to this simple diagram, 3 times more than the central bank has issued. So again, if I come back to my formula, large M divided by base money is money multiplier. Let's say your large M is simply 500, your base is 100. How much money has created by you? The multiplier, 5. Okay. In other words, if you inject 1 rupee to the system, that will create how much rupees? 5 rupees. I hope it's clear. So this multiplier is creating money to the economy. Now, if you look at this entire discussion, you might have realized that statutory reserve ratio, the fractional reserve banking, plays an important role. So multiplier is mainly dependent on SRR. Assume other factors are constant, right? We have other factors also. Remember, people keep some amount with them as 5%, for example. We'll assume that is constant, or we don't take that into consideration. But very simply, money multiplier is becoming a function of statutory reserve ratio. So multiplier is mainly determined by the reserve requirement, this SRR. From this chart, you will understand when the reserve ratio is much higher, money creation ability is low. When the reserve ratio is lower, money creation ability is higher. How do you explain this chart? Now in this chart, this blue line is 10% reserve ratio. So when you have 10% reserve ratio, you will see the expansion of money is given by blue line, so which is very high, 100, 200, etc., etc. Over time, through individual deposits, they will create more money. If you look at this blue line, let's say you increase the reserve requirement, now it is 20%. So this red line is 20%. What do you see? Now your money creation ability becomes slower. Let's say your reserve ratio increased to 50%, which means from every deposit you have to keep 50% with the central bank. What is the 50% line? Last line, thick. red line. What do you see? Money creation ability is much slower and lower. So as long as you increase the reserve ratio, money creation will be low. So if the central bank wants to reduce the monetary expansion, it can change the reserve ratio. That's why modern central banks, they have few monetary policy tools. So one tool is the reserve ratio. So when they change this reserve ratio, the ability to the commercial bank to create more money will be limited. So as a result, the reserve ratio plays very important role. Very important role. Why? It changes the central bank's ability to create money. Central bank's ability to change the money supply is subject to the reserve ratio. So if you change it, you can change the monetary expansion. Now reserve ratio, I told you, it's decided by the central bank. Central bank will say, okay, you have to keep 5%, 10%, 20% or whatever. That rate is decided by the central bank. So when that rate is decided by the central bank, it will change the ability of creating money, which means money multiplier will be changed. So using the reserve ratio, we can calculate the money multiplier. So here in this red dot, red circle, I have given the formula for money multiplier. Money multiplier equals 1 divided by RR. Money multiplier is given by M. 1 divided by RR means the reciprocal of reserve ratio. This RR is the reserve ratio. Let's say reserve ratio is 10%. Let's say 10%. Sorry. What is the money multiplier? 1 divided by 10%, which means 1 divided by 0.1. How much? 10. So money multiplier is 10 times. You will see if this reserve ratio is increased, this multiplier will decrease. If reserve ratio is decreased, this multiplier would increase. So this reserve ratio is playing an important role. So here I have given you a very simple exercise to understand this. Okay, what is this exercise? Now I have given you an initial deposit of 1000. Reserve ratio is 20%. Compute the money supply. Money supply, I have given you a hint. What is the hint? M equals, which means broad money equals money multiplier into base. Right? So money multiplier into base. That is the hint. Now I request you to calculate the money supply at 20%, 10%, and 50%. What will happen to the money supply? Whether it is going up, going down, or remain unchanged. Can you calculate? Let me know. Initial deposit is 1000. Reserve ratio is 20%. Calculate at 20%, 10%, 50%. What I need to know is the broad M money supply. So take few minutes, maybe 2-3 minutes, very straightforward. Then let me know the answers. Done? Very easy and straightforward, and I don't undermine this. There are some exam questions in the same manner. Does anyone having an answer? Let me check my students. Yes, they are. Let me check the chat. Okay, Isuri says at 20% 5,000, 10% 10,000, 50% 2,000. Mohammed also says the same. Kaushala, Dina. Okay, Amanza gives an explanation also. Money supply increases, money supply reduces when the reserve ratio increases. Yes, I see a lot of good answers. I think you got the point very clearly. If I go back to the slide, it's very straightforward. How do you calculate? The hint is given. Hint is basically M equals MB. M we don't know. B we have given as 1,000. Only thing we need to calculate M. Simple M, money multiplier. How do you calculate money multiplier? We know it's the reciprocal of the reserve ratio. So if it is 10%, reciprocal of 10%, which means you simply divide 1 by 0.1 and multiply by 100. If it is 20%, 1 divided by 0.2 multiplied by 1,000. If it is 50%, 1 divided by 0.5, then it becomes multiplied by 1,000. So if you calculate this part, you will see at 10% SRR multiplies 10. At 20% SRR multiplies 20. Sorry, 5. At 50% SRR multiplies 2. So if you apply multiplier 2, this becomes 2,000. If apply 5, becomes 5,000. If applies 10, becomes 10,000. So your answer and explanation is perfectly okay as long as you increase the reserve ratio. The ability to expand the money supply would decrease. In other words, when the central bank wants to control the expansion of money supply, it can reduce the if central bank wants to increase the money supply, it can reduce the SRR If central bank wants to reduce the money supply, it can increase the SR. So here I have mentioned you very clearly statutory reserve ratio E as the key factor affecting the money creation ability. I also mentioned to you earlier, people's willingness to keep cash also matters, but the main point is actually the reserve ratio. Okay. I hope it's clear. Any question you have up to this point? Come back to the chat box and see whether you have any questions. Do you have any question to be raised? If anyone wants to ask, this is the time. And as I said, in your past papers, there are similar questions. I remember in 2015 paper, there was a similar question. If the reserve ratio is this much, if the central bank has injected this much of money, what would be the money supply? You got 2 marks very straight away. Very simple. Okay. The idea is simple, but when it applies to the economy, it's really important. The central bank role is basically explained by this money creation story. Okay. Right. If you don't have any questions, let's move.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
If, I want to know about commercial bank
Commercial bank
assets.
assets.
Yeah.
Which means that leads to create money.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is this, please?
Isuri.
Isuri. Isuri, yes. Isuri, can you bear for a few slides with me? Because I have a slide on the factors of money creation. Okay. There I will explain how the central bank, commercial bank balance sheet or their assets will lead to create money. Is that okay?
Okay, sir.
Okay. We'll move to that slide. Then we will understand. Right. Let me go to the presentation again. Now I hope it's very clear. Money creation by the central bank. This is under normal circumstances, which means in the economy, in a usual way, the central bank is putting money to the system. People use that money for the transactions. Some part of that money will go to the banks. In the banks, people borrow from the banks, and through that borrowing process, more money is created. At the end of the day, if you take the total stock, there will be more money than the central bank issued money. Okay, this is the normal scenario. Now, I would like to link another term here with money creation. Money creation, we already know. There is a famous term in the modern context, this quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. This is a very popular term, especially this came out popular. This turned popular in since 2008-9 period, global financial crisis. Even now, the world is facing a crisis right now due to the coronavirus pandemic-related disturbances. Today also we talk about this quantitative easing. What is this quantitative easing? Any relevance with the central bank? How it works? Now, quantitative easing is used by the central banks in extraordinary periods. In other words, during normal times, the central banks are basically satisfied, with the money creation process. In normal times, the money creation is happening, which means central bank money, limited supply of base money. Based on that, money is created through the commercial banks. But in extraordinary times, money creation does not happen as expected. Why is that? During extraordinary periods, for example, during a financial crisis, commercial banks' activity becomes very low. For example, they don't get much deposits, then there are no significant borrowers. The demand for credit is low during a crisis. So as a result, commercial banks cannot create more money in the system. To address that, during a financial crisis, central banks are supplying large amounts of base money. That is called as quantitative easing. So when central bank wants to inject more money into the system in a financial crisis, it does through some extraordinary measures. We call it unconventional measures. What are these unconventional measures? Mainly, central banks are buying long-term government bonds. Normally, central banks are buying government bonds, but short-term. Mainly 1 year, 2 year, very short-term bonds are purchased by the central bank. But during the crisis, central banks can buy even longer-term bonds, 30-year, 40-year bonds to inject money to the economy. Central bank also buy company bonds, derivative stocks, which means private bonds, even commercial loans. Any asset will be purchased by a central bank during extraordinary times to have this quantitative easing. Why quantitative easing is carried out? As I said, commercial banks are inactive. Central bank wants to stimulate the economy by providing money and also promoting bank lending. How it happens? Through quantitative easing. So when in this chart I have explained, when quantitative easing is happening, central bank are purchasing securities. As a result, interest rates will be low. As a result, borrowings will be done by companies and corporates. It will increase spending, job creation and all that, which all might lead to economic expansion. Now this has happened in 2007 period crisis. You call it great financial crisis, global financial crisis. So after that, many countries like USA, they perform this quantitative easing. So as a result, the economy has expanded. Even now during this period, it has been practiced by US, ECB, Japan. All these advanced countries are practicing this quantitative easing to increase liquidity and promote bank lending, because if the central bank puts more money, interest rates will be low, people will start borrowing. I hope you have recently watched this presidential speech, new president of US. He mentioned that he is going to have additional stimulus to the economy. So additional stimulus means probably the central bank is purchasing more assets from the government and the private sector to expand the fund supply. Okay. Clear? Any question? We are moving to the practical side of the discussion. Monetary aggregates of Sri Lanka. Now in Sri Lanka, we discuss roughly 4 major types of monetary aggregates in understanding the monetary developments in Sri Lanka. First one, reserve money. You already know reserve money has various names. You can call it base money, high powered money, M0, any name. Then we have other definitions of money, which are narrow money, broad money, and financial survey. So these last 2 items, you call them as broad money aggregates. Okay. In Sri Lanka, in between this M1 and M2, there is another concept called M2, right? Some of your exam questions have this M2. But to make it simple, let's forget this M2 and let's say you have M1, then M2B. M2B means including this M2. So if you do some exercise, you will understand. Then we have M4. So let's start with each and every aggregate. First one, reserve money. By definition, you know reserve money is the monetary base injected by the central bank. So central bank is putting money, total money printed and issued by the central bank. Now I told you one day, the money printing by the central bank indicates not printing at the press. It's simply the process of issuing money to the system. So reserve money is the total issued money to the system. This total issued money in Sri Lanka has 3 subcomponents. Out of these 3 subcomponents, I am cutting this last one with a purpose to understand. There are 3, but mainly 2 components are important because this third one is really negligible. If you look at this pie chart, it's 0. But we are mainly worried about this first 2, currency held by public. I hope you remember these terms. You will remember these terms thoroughly, currency held by public and commercial bank deposits with the central bank. Right. Now I want to make a kind of a few correction here. I make this correction to register that in your mind very clearly. Okay. Now here I am using the term currency held by public. Now this currency held by public is very simply what you have in your hands. But the central bank issued money is not exactly what you have in your hand. Why? Central bank has issued money, let's say a certain quantum, you have some part, and also commercial banks are having some part in their bonds. So in that sense, we cannot exactly say currency held by public is part of reserve money. So let's make it very clear. I'm just removing this part. I'm coming to this pie chart. In this pie chart, I have made it very clear what we have here. In this pie chart, reserve money is basically coming from currency issue. You call it currency in circulation. Okay? Currency in circulation is there. This currency in circulation, we have 2 subcomponents. Hello? 2 subcomponents are there. What are these 2 subcomponents? Currency held by public, currency held by banks. As I said, you might be having some currency with you. Banks also having some currency with them. So this entire component is referred to as currency in circulation or currency issue. In your exam questions, sometimes this currency in circulation is directly given. Then no problem. You take currency in circulation, commercial bank deposits, and you add together, you get reserve money or base money or whatever. Right? So it's straightforward. Sometimes in our exam questions, we don't get this currency in circulation directly. We are given these 2 components, currency held by public, currency held by banks. Then we have to add up these 2 to get currency in circulation, and then add commercial bank deposits to get reserve money. Okay, I hope it's clear, and I'll remove these drawings here and make it very clear. What we are talking here is simply currency in circulation, CIC, where you have currency held by public, currency held by banks. That's the first thing you have in your reserve. Second thing, commercial bank deposits with the central bank. Now you might wonder, what is this central bank, commercial bank deposit with the central bank? I'll make it very simple. That is the SRR balance. Remember, commercial banks are keeping some percentage with the central bank. Let's say 10%. That 10% is the commercial bank deposit with the central bank in rupee form. Third one I told you, we can just forget it because it's a very negligible amount in Sri Lanka. These two is simply forming the monetary base, reserve money. Any question? I hope it's not very confusing. Does anyone want to raise a question? Okay, clear? Then the next question, how this money is created? I told you the central bank's actions are creating this money. What are these actions? So in this slide, we have factors affecting the reserve money or the monetary base. So this happens, I think someone asked, Udari asked a question, how the commercial bank balance sheet is related to money. In the next slide, I'm coming to that. Here, central bank balance sheet, CB balance sheet, is the source to understand the sources of money, central bank money. So when central bank buying foreign exchange from the banks and the government, it buys foreign exchange by giving rupees. So when central bank buys foreign exchange, rupees in the market will increase. The monetary base will increase. Okay. When central bank giving loans to the banks and the government, banks are borrowing from the central bank, government is borrowing from the central bank, then that will be happening through injecting new money to the system. So money would increase. Sometimes central bank is purchasing treasury bills from the government. It buys treasury bills from the government. These are government securities. When buying treasury bills, central bank is injecting new money to the system. So when buying treasury bills, money supply will increase. Same when the same happens or in opposite way when the central bank is doing opposite action. When central bank is selling foreign exchange, the central bank gives foreign exchange and absorb rupee. Then money supply will go down. When central bank is getting repaid, or the banks or government is repaying their loans, then the money supply will go down. When central bank is selling its treasury bills, or when it's maturing, money supply goes down. So you will see there are some factors that the money supply is going up. There are factors that the money supply, base money is going down. So the net result is the change in base. So delta B means the change in the monetary base is due to these factors. So we can say the B means the monetary base is mainly dependent on net foreign assets of the central bank. Net foreign assets means the difference between buying foreign assets, selling foreign assets. So net foreign assets is a factor. Plus credit to the government by the central bank, or credit to the commercial banks by the central bank. So this part we call it domestic assets. This part we call as foreign assets. So the change in base money or the monetary base is coming from net change in foreign assets, net change in domestic assets of the central bank, which means net change in government loans and loans to the government and commercial bank loans, and net change in central bank buying and selling foreign exchange. So central bank is a powerful entity because any action performed by the central bank in the market will have an impact on this monetary base. In simple terms, even the central bank takes a very simple action in the market that will change its balance sheet, and the monetary base. Okay, so that's why monetary base is considered as very high-powered money. It is coming out through central bank operations and it has the ability to create more money. That's why you call it high-powered money. So that is the first monetary aggregate in Sri Lanka, reserve money. So here I have taken some examples from the annual report for you to get some understanding. So by end 2019, the central bank has injected 932.6 billion as reserve money. So this reserve money consists of what? If you take the composition, currency in circulation plus commercial bank deposits with the central bank. I have a summary slide, I think, at the end, then you will understand. And how it has been created. Net foreign assets of the central bank, net domestic assets of the central bank. If you look at this chart will tell you how the reserve money is moving. I'll come back to those two charts because I want to discuss some of your observations by looking at this chart. Here we have some important workings also. You need to know these workings because in your exam paper, sometimes we see these questions related to the workings. What are these workings? One, whether the reserve money has gone up or gone down during these 2 years. Now, if you look at out of these numbers, the change, you will see in 2018, it has gone up by 21.3 billion. We don't have numbers for 2017 here, but if you put 2017 here, you will see the amount is 21.3, the increase. Similarly, in 2019, reserve money has gone down by 28.5 billion. If you look at these numbers, by end 2018, it's 961, but it has gone down to 932, which means reserve money has reduced. So those type of questions are there in your exam, whether the money supply has gone down or gone up. So that's an important thing. Additionally, you should also know how to calculate the rate of change. Now, rate of change here 2.3 in 2017 compared to that amount. In 2018, it has gone by 2.3%. In 2019, it has gone down by 3%. I think we can understand because it's a negative value. So the growth should also be negative. My question is how to calculate it. Now, very simple formula, you can use it for calculation. Now, let's say the change in money supply in 2019. How do you calculate? Simply the difference between 2019 value and 2018 value as a share of 2018 value. So if you do this calculation and multiply by 100, you get 3% negative. So in the exam, most of the time you don't need to calculate these, growth rates, but at least you should be able to say whether the money supply has increased or decreased and how fast. For that matter, you may need to calculate these, growth rates. It's very simple, as I said. Difference between the current year and the previous year as a percentage of the previous year. I think you have to have some understanding about this way of calculating. Okay. Then let's come to the chart. So in these two charts, what I have is one is reserve money, which means the monetary base money. Base money. Here we have currency in circulation. Currency in circulation is the largest component of reserve money. You will see from actual numbers. I have a slide at the end. Now, if you look at this chart, reserve money, what do you observe? Every year, what is your general perception on reserve money? Even the currency in circulation, if you look at, what is your general perception? What happens? Now, the blue line is the lowest line. Then lines are gradually going up. In some years, you see some lower lines as well. What is the implication of that? What does that mean? What is your observation?
People demand more money.
People demand more money. How do you guess it? From these lines, how do you justify it?
There are some peaks.
Okay. I think what you said is right. People demand more money. That's correct. How do you understand it? Every year, if you look at these lines, generally they are going up, isn't it? Now, this is very, I think, apparent from the currency in circulation chart. In 2018, we have this blue line. Then in 19, it goes to this yellow line. 20, it goes to this red line. So what you will see every year, even if you enlarge the reserve money, you will see the same scenario every year. The line is going up. What does that mean? There's a parallel shift in the line. So as you said, people are demanding more money every year. Why? The economy is expanding, isn't it? As the economy expands, people demand more money, more currency for their transactions. So it goes up every year. That is the general trend. Every year, the reserve money level goes up. I remember 10-15 years back in Sri Lanka, reserve money amount was something like 200 billion. Now it's closer to 1000 billion, which means every year money has gone up. Okay, that's one observation. And you also mentioned there are some peaks. So those peaks are visible in this currency in circulation chart. And even in the reserve money chart, you will see some peaks in April and also in December. Why is that? What could be the reason?
Festive season.
Festive season, exactly. During the festive time, people demand more currency. People have to have purchases, right? For their purchases, they need more currency, especially if you look at the New Year period, April. I think entire 80-90% of the population, they demand money for their New Year purchases. So as a result, currency in circulation goes up. January-December period is also similar. For the New Year dawn, people demand more currency, especially after with the Christmas. So reserve money and currency in circulation both goes up. Now, if you look at this year, 20, this year means 2020. Here we have the currency in circulation chart. What is your observation? Than any other years?
Higher demand.
Sorry?
Higher demand.
High demand for
Money.
money, yes. Why is that? Any guess? So every year, as I just mentioned, you see people demand more currency. But in 2020, what you can see? Now every year you will see in April there is a peak in money demand and it comes down. This year, 2020, what has happened? There's a peak in money demand April. After that, what has happened? People have not reduced their demand for money, isn't it? Why? Remember, since April last year, this uncertainty, pandemic related uncertainty was there. So as a result, people, they would like to hold more currency in their hand for their transactions, because you can't go to the bank all the time. You can't go to ATM all the time because of this restriction. So people have more cash in their hand rather than in banks. So that's why you see the line in currency in circulation, it has not come down as in the previous year. That is an important observation. Again, in this reserve money chart, can you see some sharp drops? Here there is a sharp drop. Here there is a sharp drop. What is that? Can anyone take a guess? I'm just training you to read these graphs and the story behind. Why there are some drops? Sudden drops. I think answer is there if you read the footnote. This is due to central bank actions to change the SRR. SRR is part of reserve money, isn't it? I told you here. SRR is part of reserve money or base money. So whenever the central bank changes the SRR requirement, the reserve money will change by that amount. So here, in this case, SRR has been reduced. In this case, SRR has been reduced. So the need for for the need for the sorry, I made a mistake. Requirement for having cash in SRR form is reduced. So as a result, it has come down. I hope it's clear. And then let's expand our reserve money into other monetary aggregates. So based on the deposits of financial institutions in the economy, we have banks and finance companies in the financial sector mainly as deposit taking institutions. Here what we are talking about is deposit taking institutions, not all financial institutions, deposit taking institutions, finance companies and banks. We can expand our money supply into three major aggregates. First one, narrow money. Second one, broad money. Third one, financial survey. I told you these two we call as large M, which means broad money aggregates. So if you look at these monetary aggregates, we see banks are playing a big role and bank deposits are the important components of these monetary aggregates. So let's see one by one, starting from M1. M1. M1 is narrow money. Narrow money is simply the summation of currency held by public and demand deposits held by public in commercial banks. Now, I told you currency held by public very specifically because this is different from currency in reserve money. I hope you remember in reserve money, we had currency in circulation. Remember here? Currency in circulation. There you have currency held by public as well as banks. For narrow money, we only take this part, currency held by public, not the entire currency. I'm telling you very clearly because in calculations, you have to be very clear. So currency held by public is part of narrow money. So here I have made it very clear. Currency held by public, currency in circulation minus currency held by banks and government also. But government has a very small amount, mainly the banks. So that is the first component of narrow money. Second component of narrow money is demand deposits held by public. Now demand deposits means simply current accounts, checking accounts. In banks, you know, customers can open checkable accounts or current accounts. Demand deposits means by definition, whenever you demand, you can withdraw. You know, even current account is very liquid. You simply submit a check to the bank, you can withdraw money easily. Current accounts are not having interest. Current accounts are basically a transaction account. So these are very liquid or highly liquid deposits. So that is becoming part of narrow money. So narrow money very simply M1 equals currency held by public and demand deposits. So after reserve money, this is the most liquid monetary aggregate. This is the most money type. So the moneyness is very high. Why? You have currency and demand deposits. Both are very highly liquid instruments. Then we expand further. Now, here what we have is only commercial banks. Okay, Combanks. Combanks, but only they are deposits, demand deposits. Right? Now, in commercial banks, other than demand deposits, there are some other deposits as well. What are they? They have savings deposits. They have time deposits. They have call deposits. Where do you include those deposits? Then we expand our money supply into broad money. So in broad money, we include all liquid deposits which forms money, which leads to transactions in the financial sector, which can be used for financial transactions. We include them as part of money. So under broad money, we talk about large M. Specifically, I told you in Sri Lanka, we talk about M2B. So this is again commercial banks, not only demand deposits, they have other deposits as well. Right? What are these other deposits? We have time and savings deposits, foreign currency deposits. So in broad money, we have total currency held by the public, which means part of narrow money, remember? And demand deposits. So if you add these two, that's M1. Then you have time and savings deposits held by the public. So if I write it very clearly, M2B, I'm referring to the Sri Lanka, equals M1 plus time and savings deposits plus foreign currency deposits. All these are related to commercial banks. Okay. So in this pie chart, you would see the orange color area is referred as quasi money. Remember in my original discussion, quasi money means what? Money very close to 100% liquidity. Or sometimes we call them as money substitutes. I told you deposits, time and savings deposits are included as quasi money. So in Sri Lanka, when I say time and savings deposits, there we have domestic deposits as well as some foreign currency deposits as well. So here I have given you that definition very clearly. Remember I told you if someone wants to understand the expansion of monetary aggregates in Sri Lanka, before M2B we have a concept called M2. Yeah, simply you have M1 and time and savings deposits. But I simply ignored it because the main important variable in Sri Lanka is M2B, where we have some exam questions also. Related to M2 also we have some questions, but we don't have to worry because if you know M2B, that means you can answer any question. Right? So M2B I just highlighted in the previous slide. Okay? So same thing can be elaborated in a different way in this slide. Now I come back to the question. Someone asked me how the central commercial bank assets can be used for money. Right? Now broad money, as we have already understand, it's not only central bank money. It's the banking system money, where you have both the central bank and commercial banks. Right? Now, central bank balance sheet, we already know. I told you in the balance sheet on the left-hand side, there are assets, domestic assets and foreign assets. Through that, currency notes and coins are backed. In broad money, we can understand the balance sheet of commercial banks. So in commercial banks, the main money component is deposits. I told you. Right? So this deposit, let's say deposits equal 1,000. How this deposit is matched? On the asset side, commercial banks also have foreign currency assets. They also have loans. They also have investments. If you add up all these, I'm drawing a very simple balance sheet, right? It should be equal to 1,000. So in other words, this commercial bank money is backed by foreign currency assets, loans, investments, and etc. etc. So these foreign currency assets are simply the net foreign assets. Loans and investments are simply net domestic assets. What does that mean? Sources of broad money is basically coming from net foreign assets of the commercial banks as well as central bank. Central bank is already there because central bank is issuing currency, no? So it should be there. But the main driver of broad money is commercial bank assets. Similarly, net domestic assets is a source of money mainly driven by commercial banks, domestic assets which are the loans and investments. Out of these loans, what is the major component? Commercial banks are giving loans to the government, public corporations, and main component is the private sector. More than 80% of commercial bank loans are to the private sector. Now, for example, if you are a borrower from a bank, you are a contributor to the money supply because your borrowing is included in private sector borrowings. So private sector borrowing is a large component of broad money. Okay. So what I want to tell you very simply, I'll erase these first and repeat it, then it will be much clearer. Broad money is generated or created by both the central bank and commercial banks. We already know. Central bank's role we already know, no? So we can just forget it here. Commercial bank's role we have to understand very clearly. That's what I have done so far using this simple balance sheet structure. So in the simple balance sheet structure of a commercial bank, on the liability side, they have deposits, which is a component of money. Remember? Here we realize deposits. This is a component of money. So that is in their liability side. Imagine that equals 1,000. Our problem is how this 1,000 is created. It's created by the commercial bank assets. So assets are basically foreign exchange, then domestic assets by way of loans and investments. So foreign assets are included under net foreign assets. Loans and investments are included under net domestic assets. So this net domestic assets means mainly loans and investment, and I told you under that private sector credit is the largest category. So whenever you borrow from a banking sector, you are basically helping to create money in the economy. Okay. Here in this summary, I think it's very clear. This is broad money aggregates for Sri Lanka. I told you, let's say the total amount is 7.6 trillion. How it has been created? Through the summation of net foreign assets and net domestic assets. So net foreign assets are basically the forex transactions of the banking sector. You will see here commercial banks very clearly. And domestic assets are basically the transactions of the domestic banking sector, where we basically have loans and investments. So loans are actually captured in this domestic credit. So out of domestic credit, I told you, credit to the private sector, that is the most important category. So if you look at these numbers, it is the largest category, 5.8 trillion. So that is a huge amount of money created by the private sector borrowings in the banking sector. Similarly, I told you here also we have calculated the change and the growth rate. There are some questions in your paper relevant to these changes and increases in money supply. So you need to understand these changes as well. Last item is the financial survey. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Here, in addition to central bank and commercial banks, we add deposits of other FIs, OFIs. So in Sri Lanka, what are these OFIs? There are two types. LSBs, licensed specialized banks like NSB, Sanasa, those are the specialized banks. Then we have licensed finance company, basically the finance company sector. So they also accept deposits and give loans. That is also creating money. So OFI money, if you add up to our money supply equation, that becomes M4. M4 means simply financial survey. So if you take financial survey, there you have M2B, we already know this part, and then time and savings deposits held by LSBs and LFCs, which means OFIs. I'm just giving you an understanding only here because in our exam paper, we don't have this financial survey. But we have monetary aggregates in Sri Lanka up to financial survey. That's the purpose I put it here. So here we have the summary, right? We have base money, which means reserve money. I simply told you currency in circulation, commercial bank deposits with the central bank. And since it is very negligible, we can forget the last part, government agency deposit with the central bank. Narrow money, currency plus demand deposits held by public with the commercial banks. Now here currency means not currency in circulation, currency held by public, remember. Then we have narrow money plus time savings deposits, M2. And I told you we can actually ignore this part because our major variable is M2B. So there we have M2 plus foreign currency deposit. Now one thing here is you can't compute M2B unless you don't know M2 actually. So you need to know it. But our focus is mainly on M2. Then we have M4 financial survey where we have licensed specialized banks and finance companies. So in this chart, I have plotted the current movements of these, current in the sense up to last year December, movements of these monetary aggregates. You will see these are actually growth rates. So growth rates during last year, 2019 and 20, we see growth rates have come down. So which means monetary growth has slowed down during last weeks. Now in this table, I have extracted this from the central bank annual report. Okay. In this annual report, 7.2, this table is 7.2. There you have a very clear explanation how these monetary aggregates are, defined. So I told you currency outstanding, which is currency in circulation. So it has two parts, currency held by public, currency held by commercial banks. So after that, the most important thing for us is the reserve money. And we know how to calculate reserve money, simply adding up 1, 2, 3 is very negligible. I told you, it doesn't matter even if you add or not. For definition, you might add. So then you get reserve money. So from reserve money, you can go to narrow money supply. To calculate narrow money supply, remember we take currency. Currency means not one, not currency in circulation. We take currency held by public, this part, right? Then you add up demand deposits held by the public with the commercial banks, then you get narrow money supply. If you add up time and savings to M1, then you get broad money supply M2. I told you this is not very important for us. This is only for understanding. But the most important variable, last one, M2B, where you add up 0.88 and 0.9, which means M2 plus currency, foreign currency deposit. So 8.9, 8 plus 9 is the broad money supply. Now here we have another two variables calculated in monetary aggregates. The first one, money multiplier. I hope you remember money multiplier. How do we define? Broad money divided by monetary base. So in this case, 10 divided by 4. Okay? That is money multiplier. Velocity, how do you calculate? What is the meaning of velocity? Multiplier, we already know how much money is created through borrowing and lending in the commercial banks. Velocity means, the idea of velocity indicates the speed at which monetary unit is circulated in the economy. The speed at which a monetary unit is circulated in the economy. Let's say you inject 1 rupee to the system and how fast it circulates in the economy. So in Sri Lanka, it's 2.2 times, which means if you add up 1 rupee to the system, it will create 2.2 times transactions in the economy, not multiply, number of transactions. How do you calculate it? There is a formula. You have to keep this in mind because in your exam questions, you have this nominal GDP divided by broad money. Okay. Nominal GDP divided by broad money. I think in our discussions we use broad money as M. So I put M, then it's clear. Nominal GDP divided by broad money. So you should know these two formulas because we have some questions in the question papers to be answered. Okay. These are some actual movements of monetary aggregates in Sri Lanka. You will see, as I said, the factors of money, foreign assets, credit to the private sector, credit to the public corporations. These are the factors of money. You will see during 2020, the money supply has been going up mainly due to credit provided to the private sector as well as the government. If you look at last year, the government credit is really high, significantly high. Commercial bank credit, the commercial bank was giving some credit, but you will see from this chart. But when compared to the past period, it's actually low. So if you take the monetary expansion during 2019-20 period, money is mainly driven by government credit, because government has been borrowing heavily, supported by part of private sector credit, and no contribution from the foreign assets. If you look at this part, the foreign assets becoming negative. So the green area is negative. So which means contribution of foreign assets are low. You don't need to worry about this explanation in your exam because you don't have to discuss the factors. But to answer some of the questions, you need to understand these factors. Now, for example, now let's say the government, central bank is observing this private sector credit is picking up substantially. It's going very high. So in that case, the central bank might take some actions because high expansion of credit is not good for the economy. It's good in a period like this because nowadays there's no credit. But in a normal period, significant expansion in credit is a problem. So in that period, in such periods, the bank may need to have some policy actions to control the credit expansion. So in that sense, understanding these charts and their stories is important, even though we don't have direct questions related to this chart in mind. Okay. So after that, I have past paper questions. I really recommend you, before you come to the next class, answer this 2015 question on monetary aggregates and the 2019 question on monetary aggregates. So both are some calculations. So if you do these questions, we can discuss the answers next week. So I really recommend you. You are welcome to do all these questions, but I will be mainly focusing on two questions, probably 2015 and 2009. Okay. And I really request you to look at some of these references. For example, the Central Bank Annual Report, Chapter 7, this one. And Central Bank, there is a small price stability pamphlet, a booklet. If you read it, you will understand these monetary aggregates and their importance very clearly. So do that. It's not a must, but I really recommend. If you read it, you will get some additional understanding, and that would be easy in your exam. Okay, can we stop here? It's 5:30, sharp 5:30. So please do some questions before you come to the class next time. Then we will have a half an hour, 1 hour discussion on the answers. And thereafter, we will move to another interesting area, that is monetary policy. Okay, we'll stop here. Thank you and good night. Have a good week.